Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back in with you guys for another show, for a slightly different one, around officiating, around sort of looking at officiating decisions, about VAR, and the implications that that's had on Arsenal this season. I thought it might be interesting because there's been a effectively. And that's a big problem for Arsenal because often we as Arsenal fans feel rather aggrieved that we aren't getting the rub of the green necessarily in certain games. And I mean, sometimes we can feel that way, and it is genuine because even with VAR, we have felt at times that it's not fair. It's not right that Arsenal have to face a lot of these decisions. Apparently, the audio cut at the start. My apologies. Don't know why that happens. Sometimes this mic has a mind of his own, even though it is crisp as anything. But yeah, you can hear me now, which is great. But I basically started off the show by saying that we want to discuss an article that's been written by ESPN and put out today regarding that Arsenal should have been given 9 more points than they currently have, and that would result in Arsenal sitting fifth based on other teams dropping and gaining points respectively as well. We're going to get plenty of your comments in our live chat as well, especially from our members. If you'd like to become a member, you can do so by going on your desktop and clicking the join button. You get lots of exclusive content and badges and icons. Oh, Christ, on a mic. That's me playing my drum and bass music in the background. But if you do want to do that, you can click on the join button and you get lots of exclusive stuff. So please do. Also subscribe to the channel if you're new and give a like if you enjoy this video and the content. So let's talk about it then. You can see on your screen there, Arsenal 9 points extra put them in fifth. Now, the first part of this video, we're going to use to discuss what I feel about this, what I think about it, and get some of your thoughts in the chat box as well. Sam Wilson already reckons that referees have a vendetta against Arsenal, and that is a fact. For me, I don't think it's as cut dry as that. I think that we as fans, psychologically, you always are going to feel more aggrieved than if you are a fan of another side. It's just how it is. You look at other games and you always think that, well, if it's Spurs, you're going to look in a more biased way. It's psychological. That's just how it is. Even myself is going to have some form of bias in some way, shape, or form. So we can't always be just down to human error. That's what it is at the end of the day. So we're going to go into that. And in the second half of the show, I want to look at some of the challenges that have happened a lot across the season in some instances, and look at the inconsistencies of VAR and maybe look at some of the things that need to change going forwards, because we all witnessed against at the weekend Aubameyang with that awful challenge that led to him getting a red card. But we have seen similar challenges of other players, of other clubs, even against us and in games that wasn't against us, and not being punished for the same challenges. And we're going to look into all of those. So please stay tuned. And in the chat box, if you could place your comments on what you think about things, then that would be really, really helpful. Apologies about the voice. I'm still suffering because I'm quite ill still, got a bit of a cough, but we're going to soldier through and keep going. Hasib says that the rules of the game are too ambiguous for an official to interpret, which is all VAR can interpret. Once we have clear or legislation, we will see less problems with VAR. 100%, mate. I agree with you. Once there is more clear interpretation of the rules, then we will see better consistency. But while there isn't that, we need to look into it a bit more, and we'll definitely come on to that in the second half. So let's get stuck in and have a look at this table. It tells us that Arsenal should be sitting in fifth. Okay, that's what it's clearly saying. Liverpool's sitting there on 56 points, and we're down there on 36 points. It's mad that the difference is still 20 points between us and Liverpool, even if these decisions went our way. Now, for me, this table doesn't really mean too much. I don't think that it's right. I don't think that you can look into it and think that this is something that means anything too much, because it comes down to a decision in a game. One decision which they then base on and think that means that either costs the team the win or the loss, or it becomes a draw or whatever. But we know that these decisions take place at different points during the match. This decision could have been made at 5 minutes in, 20 minutes in, 50 minutes in, whatever. And After that, there's a whole rest of the game still to play, and it would be different. The other team could come back and score again, could score twice, could score 3 times. We could score a couple of times. It changes the flow of the game. So I don't hugely buy in to these types of tables because they're so subjective and they're so just cut and dry based upon the decisions that have been made that it doesn't make too much sense to take them in isolation. You can't look at, I mean, some of the things were like the Jorginho tug in the Chelsea game that we looked at, which obviously led to Chelsea's second, I believe it was their second goal, possibly their first goal. And had that have happened, Arsenal could have been in a better situation where we could have either gone 2-0 up and gone on to win that, or the same thing could have happened again. Arsenal could have still lost the game 2-1. So it's so subjective. It doesn't work. You cannot sit there and put a tweet out and say that Arsenal should be 5th. I mean, the title of this video is basically the heading of the headline that came out on ESPN because of this and the amount of tweets I've seen with this headline. But I don't agree with it. I don't believe in the headline of this video or of the titles of the newspapers because it's a farce. You cannot sit there and say that Arsenal should be 5th if all the decisions should be made. Now, the opposite side to that is to say that officials should be better, is that the Premier League has arguably some of the most inconsistent officiating in the league by a long, long distance. There is, and I mean, obviously I watch a lot of La Liga, and if you go and watch La Liga, even them a couple of years ago, it was easily the worst in Europe. La Liga officiating has been so poor for so long, really, really poor. But the Premier League has taken over that so simply. There is so many inconsistencies. There's so many wrong usages of VAR. They don't go over to the monitor. I just don't get why you wouldn't give people a lot more clarity by allowing the referee to go over. I mean, you say allowing them. I'm pretty sure they are allowed. They are allowed to go over to the monitor and have a check of certain things. But I just don't see why they don't. The consistency just isn't there. And I think a lot of that comes down to, as we mentioned earlier on by Hasib there, is that it's an interpretation of the rules. People don't seem to know the rules enough of the game to warrant this type of criticism and this type of officiating, because if you don't understand how the handball rule works, or if the offside rule in certain scenarios with different phases of play, when a serious foul play like we saw at the weekend happens, it's really difficult to come up with a genuine, legitimate response, because none of us know where we stand, because the FA has not come out and told us exactly what is expected from some of these situations. With the handball one, it seems pretty straightforward. If the ball touches your hand and you're an attacking player and it leads to a goal, that's handball. That goal is ruled out. Alternatively, in defence, if the ball hits your hand and it's going towards goal, I'm pretty sure that means that they would then give a penalty because it's interrupted with the field of play. The other side of things, at the World Cup, it used to be the debate around whether a handball is deliberate or not. And there was that. And it's very subjective. It's hard to know whether a handball is deliberate or not. We saw it in the World Cup final between France and Croatia. I believe it was Perisic was caught handballing it, and then it was given as a penalty when a lot of people thought there was no way that that was a penalty whatsoever. Joust thinks that rarely blaming the referees. Our football and the players have been atrocious. We don't warrant to be 5th. Stop this. And I completely agree with you, Joust. We don't deserve to be 5th. And to be fair, there are a lot of sides in this league that don't deserve to be in the positions that they are, because it has been woeful. And the Premier League table is pretty much structured the way it is because so many of the bigger teams have been so poor. Then you look at the likes of Sheffield United, the likes of Wolves, Leicester specifically, and how good they've been. But if you look actually at Arsenal, we don't deserve to be 5th. That's why we're 10th. We haven't been good enough. No matter the officiating decisions, you can turn around and say that if some of those decisions had have gone our way, there's a big chance that we still wouldn't have picked up the points in the games that we would have needed to. Because what it does is that table on the screen, all it does is show you what would have happened if the game finished when that decision was made, or if a penalty was scored or saved or whatever, or not taken. And the game ends at that moment. It doesn't show you a prediction of what might have happened for the rest of the game, because that's impossible and you can't come up with that. And it's a really frustrating thing to be sitting there thinking, reading this article thinking Arsenal should be 5th, and then it influences so many people. Marcus says, This is the problem with Arsenal supporters. You guys talk too much. You think you know everything. You have an opinion for everything. I think means the fact is the fact. Now, whilst I don't think that generalisation works for all fans whatsoever, in fact, I don't think it works for any Arsenal fans. It's a good thing to talk about stuff like this. It's a good thing to round up stuff like this. But what Arsenal fans are guilty of is that sometimes we can be very easily drawn in by the media. We can very easily be manipulated by some of the headlines, the transfer speculation, and articles like this, which make us believe that we should be winning. I'm just going to turn on my charger because for some reason mine's on low battery. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't be fifth, and we've already talked about that. Let's move on to the second point that I want to discuss, which is the tackles. Now, I'm going to scroll up. This is the Aubameyang challenge at the weekend. This is the challenge which obviously against, I believe it was Max Meyer, resulted in him going off injured. It wasn't too bad in the end, I don't think. But it is a red. We talked about this in the Raw Reactions game. We said that this was a red card. But the issue is that the first one, and we talked about it on the podcast yesterday with Kenny, the official in the game gave a yellow. And I feel personally that some of these referees are using and are in the knowledge that VAR is there, and they are taking the safe route and they are making the wrong decisions more often. It's affecting their accuracy and their precision in their decision making and the legitimacy of it. And they're just going to wait for VAR to make a decision. The problem with that is that VAR, whilst is a computer, is also run by another human being. And that human being is going to be influenced, as all human beings are. And that human being and that official at Stockley Park will be affected by the decision that the referee has made. Because the referee, who is a top-class official, has gone through all the rigorous training that is necessary and needed, knows all the rules of the game like the back of his hand, and yet still managed to make some of the wrong decisions, has made that choice, has made that decision in that moment, and he's got it wrong. And that will also affect why VAR has had to be overturned several times. If you look at what happened with Heung-min Son, got a red card, they appealed it, it was overturned. And it just doesn't make sense for a VAR decision to be overturned, because as soon as you overturn a VAR decision, you discredit the whole thing. You discredit everything that VAR stands for, everything that it's meant to be a certainty. It's the final decision. But if it's the final decision, then why is a board of people allowed to overturn it? In that moment, the officials should be qualified enough to make that right decision in the game. And it's a fact that they weren't good enough to make that decision, and they got it wrong. Gooner Suspended says that we should be using VAR the same way the rest of the big leagues are. The ref needs to have the final say. 100%. It shouldn't have to come from Stockley Park. The ref should go over to the monitor. If they think in Stockley Park that it's worth looking at, they need to tell the referee to go over. They've sacrificed accuracy for speed. And I don't know about you, but I don't care if a game has 11, 12, 13 minutes of added injury time. One, it means I get to watch the Arsenal for longer. And two, it means that they make the right decision, which is the most important thing, is that the ref is able to go over, there's clear communication, there's clear showing of what happened, and it's as simple as that. It's not a difficult thing. But then we get onto this, where we're talking about the challenge from Aubameyang. Now, if you look at this tackle from Robertson on Lucas Moura, he's gone over the ball. He's gone into the guy's shin, which is arguably more dangerous because, as you can see, Lucas Moura is planting his foot in this moment, and it's easily able to break that guy's leg if he's not strong enough or if he's extremely unlucky. And I don't think the ref even blew for a foul in this one. Robertson wasn't sent off for this, and it's just the consistency. If you're going to send Aubameyang off for this, going into his ankle very dangerously, the ball's gone. In this moment, the ball's gone. And he's gone into his ankle, and it could break. He's gone into his shin, sorry, and it could break it. So in that moment, it's the consistency. You go down to this one with, I can't remember who the Norwich player is, number 23. Please help me in the chat box if you know. It might be Buendia. And he goes into Guendouzi's ankle in exactly the same way and doesn't get sent off. So unless the rules have changed in the space of hours and days and months and weeks, then it makes no sense why these are happening. I don't understand why these decisions are being made. M says, Tom, what are you complaining about? That is definitely a red. And I know it is 100%. It's a red card. They are all red card offences. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm debating. I'm debating that the previous two that I've just showed you, the Norwich player on Guendouzi and Robertson on Lucas Moura, were not given as red cards. You could also look at the Cresswell challenge on Pepe. That's a red card offence. Easily with the force, he's not in control. He scissors him. It's not a clear challenge. He's not in control. Whether you win the ball or not, some of that is down to luck. Whether you win the ball, because if you're out of control, sometimes you will still hit the target. It's a fair comment to make. So I'm not going against that. Just said, Tom, it's a red card. Stop going against the obvious. I've said this. I don't get why people seem to think I don't think it's a red card. It's a very clear red card. I'm not arguing that. The point is that if Aubameyang is a red card, which it is, Robertson should be a red card, and the Norwich player should be a red card. It's as simple as that. Ben says, the issue with VAR is not the accuracy, it's letting officials decide which plays require looking at. And it should be all of them. Jeff says, don't let VAR be an excuse for us being 10th. These players and the last manager are below par. And we've talked about that as well. I think sometimes maybe we need to be a little bit more coherent with what we're going on here, because several times I've said already that it's ridiculous to think that we should be 5th. We shouldn't. We should be 10th because we don't deserve to be any higher. And I've said that the Aubameyang was a red card. So I don't see the understanding there. Gooner suspended says there is no consistency. That's the problem. And that is very, very key. Owen, thank you. Tom isn't arguing the red against Alba. He's arguing the consistency of refs in the final league. Thank you. Someone is listening. So that's exactly what I'm saying. I don't get how you can say that this, which is a red card, and these two are not red cards, and that Stockley Park don't pick them up as red cards. It beggars belief. And then what's the most frustrating thing in the world is that I've seen some people on Twitter today going on trying to prove that the Crystal Palace goal was offside. And when they used the VAR technique, which by the way is cropping a picture so that it falls in line, but some people don't seem to understand that the cropping of a picture, that's not the right line. You're not going down the right line of the picture, and you can tell that because the lines in the grass are going at a different angle. It's driving people insane that we have to do this now, and that every single decision is being torn apart and meticulously looked at. But that's because we aren't being given consistency by the referees. So to sum up, Arsenal should not be 5th because it's a ridiculous way of looking at a table. You cannot turn around and say that if the game's all stopped in that moment, that's how the game would end, because it wouldn't. Because even if these decisions were overturned or not given or not made, then it doesn't mean the game stops there. The game would continue on. And with our form and our players and our consistency and our problems defensively, we probably still wouldn't have been able to pick up those 9 extra points. And in all the other games, it would be a ridiculous thing to suggest. And yes, it has. So there is that. But people love and lap that stuff up. So I'm not really surprised by that. Second of all, the VAR needs to be more consistent. You cannot give a red card for Aubameyang and not give red cards for the other two. If you're not giving the red cards for the other two, then you have to let Aubameyang off. I don't think that's right. I think Aubameyang should have been sent off. I think the other two should have been sent off. But you need to be consistent. And finally, the ref needs to have a final say, 100%. And as someone in the chat box brought that up earlier on, that the ref must have the final say. The refs need to go over and look at the screen, as 95 Winston says. I just don't understand why they are not going over and looking at the screen so the crowd know the ref has seen it. In the Crystal Palace game, they actually showed the tackle on the screen. Did they show the tackle for Robertson on the screen? Did they show the tackle for the Norwich player on Guendouzi on the screen? No, they didn't. It's a lack of consistency, and it's a really, really, really big problem. I just don't understand how this can continue on and be used as an effective tool in the Premier League. We're going to finish things off there because I feel like my voice is going to give out any moment now. Thank you ever so much for tuning in. Please drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed this discussion. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are on the current officiating, what you think about that article as well. I've definitely been very blunt in my thinking. And ultimately, drop a subscription onto the channel if you like this content and you want to see more of it as well. I'm really, really going to try and push out some tactical breakdowns of players if I can get the time, but with work. During this mad time of the year, it's very, very difficult to not do these discussion shows with you guys and chat with you guys. They take a lot of effort and a lot of time to make. Plus, Y-Scout, as I've already mentioned, is like 200 quid. So it's just about trying to get in and work out how I'm going to do that. So maybe payday will be the time, which is until the 25th, but we'll see what happens. Can't wait to speak to you again very, very soon. Looking forward to previewing a couple of games coming up with the boys. And you can check out the podcast from yesterday with Kenny, Ken, and Raf. I'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.